Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Kansas City-based jazz pianist, composer, educator, and arranger Brant Jester. Originally from Ozark, Missouri, he came to Kansas City to pursue a jazz dream. He graduated from Missouri State University with his bachelor's degree in music performance, and here in 2022, he remains a very busy pianist, instructor, and sideman across the greater Kansas City area. Along with the performance and teaching, he is also a composer and arranger, writing music for jazz ensemble and choral music. He's got a great story. Dig this interview.
Yeah, hey, Brad, what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're a busy guy. Before we get into your kind of what you're doing on the Kansas City scene and kind of the history of your life, I want to know, how did you survive COVID? You know, we went through quite a 2 years, and I think that in particular, musicians got it the hardest out of the entertainment industry. And I'm wondering how you did over that 2-year period and how it changed you now that we're coming out of it.
Right. So during COVID, I was still in Springfield, Missouri, and I grew up near Ozark, and that's where I was living. And during that time, I was teaching piano lessons online. Most of my teaching had moved to online at that point. And in any given week, I was seeing somewhere between, it was kind of off and on, but somewhere between like 15 and like up to 25 students a week. And so that was what was kind of keeping me afloat because gigs in Springfield weren't at that time happening as much. So that was kind of how I kept afloat.
Talk to me a little bit about what you're doing these days on the Kansas City scene. Anything, any recordings on the horizon, teaching, performances? What are you doing these days?
Right. So I moved here last June. It would have been June 6th, I think it was, to be exact. So a little over a year ago. I just moved up here to try to get on the scene and play gigs. And lo and behold, one thing, led to another. And then I found out Carl Allen was going to be the leader of the jazz department at UMKC. So I actually decided, well, I'm going to go back to school, and get my master's degree there. And so upon moving up here just to kind of get on the scene and try to play gigs, I'm also doing grad school now. So, but as far as upcoming performances, my steady gig right now is at Majestic Restaurant on Saturday nights. I play trio downstairs from 6 to 10 o'clock every Saturday.
Was it a big jolt to you to move up here to Kansas City? And had it been something you've been thinking about for a while?
A little bit. I actually Matt Villinger reached out to me, and he was sort of my contact. And so we started chatting a little bit more. I had known Matt over the past couple of years, by just kind of coming up briefly to watch a couple of gigs, when he was playing, if I traveled up here. But he reached out to me just because we had been communicating a little bit back and forth over phone and said, hey, there's this Majestic Saturday solo piano spot that's opened up, after the pandemic was opening. And that would have been around March into April of 2021. So I started driving up here to make that solo gig once a week. And after driving up here for 8 or 9 weeks or so, I finally just decided probably should just move here. And once I made the move, I just kind of started getting really busy playing a lot of gigs, and it was just really great. It was the right time and a good time to move.
Good deal. So let's go back to the beginning of your life, growing up in Ozark, Missouri. How did you get involved with music and more specifically jazz, maybe some influences on you?
I started playing the piano a little bit late. I was 13 years old. I was just going into 8th grade. Some early influences was actually just singing in the choir. I tried trumpet because my sister played trumpet and I didn't like it. I found that I could sit at the piano for, several more hours than I could at the trumpet and be more fascinated and not as tired. So that went away very quickly. So piano gravitated to being my primary instrument. But I also sang, and I sang in choirs for, I think, over 13 years. So I enjoyed singing, and so that kind of sparked a lot of the curiosity about writing and arranging. And just after a year of playing the piano, I started accompanying the junior high school choirs and just playing for my friends and peers. And I just found excitement into that. And so once I was in 8th grade, I discovered Clifford Brown. I heard this recording of him playing Joy Spring, and it just hit me like, real quickly that this is what I've been looking for, because I grew up in a household where my mom and dad were listening to 60s and 70s music. My mom was listening to like Barry Manilow and the Doobie Brothers, and then my dad was listening to Steely Dan and Earth, Wind and Fire. So things like that. And so I definitely had the, background of, some rich music and interesting harmonies, which makes sense that I just kind of wanted a little bit more. And so then I found this recording on YouTube of Monty Alexander and Billy Taylor playing 2 pianos, and they were playing Joy Spring, and that was it. Once I found those 2 guys, I was off to the races and just kept on playing jazz through high school.
What was the first live jazz show that you ever saw?
Ooh, I should know this, but I know exactly what it was. Missouri State Jazz Band came to my high school and played. And they played a couple selections by Thad Jones, some Mincer arrangements, and I knew right then and there I was really into it. The harmonies and just that was a great band. Randy Ham is the head of the Jazz Studies department down there, and he was leading this band, and it was killing. And so that's actually where I ended up doing my undergraduate degree, was Missouri State, and doing jazz there, studying under him.
Talk to me a little bit about being involved in the Kansas City jazz scene. What do you like the best about it?
Everybody's cool here. There's a lot of bass players and drummers, and there's a lot of horn players. It's obviously a little bit of a bigger scene than it is in Springfield, or it was in Springfield, I should say. And I like it because there's a lot of more mature and seasoned and experienced musicians, a lot of older cats that are willing to play with me, and that makes a big difference, because I feel like a lot of people my age or in my age group, not even just here, but, around, are trying to play with people their age. And, I'm really kind of more interested in playing with the more experienced musicians that might be a little bit older than me, because that's actually where I feel like I've learned the most. So just being up here and playing with older musicians that have more experience has been really the best thing about moving here.
When you decide you're coming to a town like Kansas City, which is clearly one of the cradles of jazz in the world, it was one of the beginnings of this art form. What feelings do you have as a musician entering into a Kansas City jazz scene about keeping that tradition and history and flame alive for something that's been so strong in a jazz town?
The tradition's definitely here, and I love Count Basie, and I know Jay McShann's another big figure, and of course Charlie Parker too. But for me, at least in my path of study and who I've listened to more, is Count Basie, and he always had a great band, and especially discovering his music and his tradition, and the time that he spent in Kansas City is very important to me. And one thing that he did was he swung real hard, and that's something that I am trying to do and still trying to figure out, which might sound funny, but I'm just figuring out how to swing and keep that tradition going. So if I could do anything, it's just to keep on swinging, and that's something that Count Basie did. So that's something I think about a lot.
The one thing that I always think about when I'm down on 18 and Vine is what it would be like to just be plopped down there during the heyday. Like, what would be happening? How many places would be just roaring with music? And I'm curious, if you could go into a time machine and go back in time and see a performance anywhere, where are you going? Who are you going to see?
Wow. I'm not going to overthink this because it's just the first thing that came to mind. I would love to go back and hear Tommy Flanagan play the piano, or Hank Jones, or Oscar Peterson, some of those and Bud Powell and Barry Harris, those cats. That's who I would like to go back and hear. You know, those bebop players from the 50s going into the 60s. McCoy Tyner playing trio, which actually, I take that back. I actually got to see McCoy Tyner, so never mind. But probably Tommy Flanagan. He's one of the my favorite players that kind of came, you know, out of that school, and I don't think a lot of people talk about him, you know, and his touch on the piano. So I'll just say that I'd like to go back and hear Tommy play with his trio.
Yeah.
And accompany Ella Fitzgerald. You know, he spent, I think, over 15 years, you know, in charge of Ella Fitzgerald's book and all of her arrangements and doing that he kind of got sidelined. You know, he didn't record a lot of trio records until the mid-70s and on through the 80s and 90s. So he's somebody that I wish I could have heard, but unfortunately he passed away in 2001 of a brain aneurysm, and I was still probably wetting the bed at that time. So I don't even...
So what is it that you look forward to the most as a professional musician? Every day you wake up, what is it that gets you going?
It's the community. It's the hang, you know. It really isn't even about the music, you know. And I mean that as in, you know, if you're around the right cats that have a good attitude and they bring an uplift and a joy off the bandstand, then, you know, the music will come. And it will be, you know, just a side product of the friendship, you know. So the friendships are important to me, you know, maybe more than anything else. Because if, you know, you're the people you're playing with, if you don't have a connection with them, you know, that can be hard. And sometimes, you know, you know, just moving to town just a little over a year ago, there's a lot of first gigs for me where I'll play with somebody for the first time. But, you know, it's like a beautiful friendship that, you know, kindles on the spot. And so I dig that most, is just the community and just how open everybody is around here. So that's great.
So as a city, what do you like the best about Kansas City?
Maybe perhaps that it's pretty diverse. There's a lot of different musicians with different mindsets and goals, you know, in terms of the music they're playing and the bands that they assemble. There's a lot of different things going on. So perhaps that is exciting. And one of the things that makes Kansas City special, you know, is that you have a lot of different formations of groups and the style of music that they're playing. So that's very cool.
So why do you love jazz?
You know, there's a couple things that I like about jazz, but number one is I like to swing, you know, as I mentioned earlier, it's just there's something so fun about swinging. And then the other thing, maybe second, you know, to why I like jazz is that it's sort of, it's a language, you know, and you can meet somebody you've never played with before, but there's this mutual understanding that if you're going to play a jazz gig, that basic things that have been dealt with, you know, from different, you know, areas. Everybody comes from different places, but, you know, if I want to sit down and call Take the A Train, you know, there's a mutual understanding there that, you know, they'll probably know that tune, you know, and so just the fact that it's a different language that brings people together. So I definitely like that. And I think it's unique that not everybody speaks this language. So it's very special. So I would say between just I like to swing and then the fact that I can be, you know, speaking another language per se, you know, musically is probably the two things that I like about jazz.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of you. Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? You know, that's a really that's a deep question. I think I'm somebody who just enjoys playing music with other people and sharing experiences on and off the bandstand. I definitely think that I'm a person that needs to be around other people, as I mentioned earlier, who has more experience and also love this music as much as I do. So who do I think I am? I think I'm a jazz musician, and I think I'm going to keep on going after that, just playing. There's nothing more exciting than being able to just go play a gig, and disconnect from all the things that are going on in society right now that can be kind of a drag. It's very much an escape for me. So that's who I am. Is I'm a musician who likes to play jazz and kind of get away from the negative mojo.
I dig it. Brant, thank you for taking time out today to talk about the music, your time here in Kansas City. Good luck with everything. I look forward to seeing you out there on the scene at some point.
Oh, man, yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Kansas City and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Brant for his time, music, and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.